When we think of murderers, most of us imagine hardened adults, people shaped by years of violence or crime. But history shows us that sometimes the most shocking killers are not adults at all, they are teenagers. And while many deny, hide, or manipulate after committing their crimes, a surprising number of teen killers have confessed everything, sometimes within hours, sometimes after years of silence. These confessions raise unsettling questions. Why do they talk? What makes them reveal such dark truths? And what does this say about the thin line between guilt, justice, and redemption? The weight of a crime too heavy to hide. Unlike adult offenders who may carefully cover their tracks, many teen killers find the burden of their crimes unbearable. Psychologists argue that teenagers, still in emotional and cognitive development, are often unequipped to live with such a secret. Some blurt out confessions immediately, overwhelmed by shock and guilt. Others sit in interrogation rooms, breaking down under the steady pressure of detectives. In one infamous case, a 16-year-old boy walked into a police station, sat down, and calmly confessed to killing his own best friend. He explained in chilling detail what happened, but what haunted investigators most was not just the act. It was his calm delivery, his need to share the story, as though the silence itself was worse than the crime. Interrogation rooms, where the truth breaks free. For decades, interrogations have been the setting where teen killers reveal their darkest truths. These moments are often captured on video, later becoming evidence in court and viral clips online. In these rooms, teens are confronted not just by police officers, but by their own emotions: fear, guilt, shame, or even relief. Many crumble under the weight of pointed questions. Where were you that night? Why did you do it? Do you understand what happened? The answers vary. Some confessions come with tears and shaking hands, others with chilling flatness. But almost all reveal one thing. Teenagers often confess because they cannot reconcile the horror of what they've done with the ordinary lives they were living just hours before. The first story we'll examine. To understand the unsettling world of teen confessions, we begin with the story of a 15-year-old girl from the Midwest who committed a crime so shocking it rocked her entire community. For weeks, police searched desperately for clues. They interviewed friends, neighbors, and teachers, until finally, the girl herself walked into the police station and said, "I can't keep this in anymore." Her confession not only revealed the details of the crime, but also shattered the illusion of innocence that surrounded her. Why did she do it? What drove her to admit everything instead of hiding it? And how did her words change the course of justice? This case, like many others we'll explore, forces us to question. When a teen killer confesses, is it an act of guilt, a cry for help, or something more complicated? Why confessions matter? Confessions play a crucial role in the justice system. In many cases, they are the most powerful evidence available. For prosecutors, a confession can close the case. For families of victims, it can provide closure or sometimes reopen wounds. And for the teen confessing, it can be both a burden lifted and a sentence sealed. But there's another side to this. Not all confessions are pure truth. Some teens confess out of fear, manipulation, or pressure during long interrogations. Others embellish details, creating confusion about what really happened. This raises controversy. Are all confessions reliable, or can justice be misled by the words of young, impressionable suspects? Setting the stage. As we move deeper into this series, we'll look at several haunting cases where teenagers not only committed murder, but also told everything afterward. Each story reveals something different about human psychology, justice, and the clash between rehabilitation and revenge. In the chapters to come, we'll examine a teenage boy who confessed to killing his parents and why he couldn't stop talking about it. A group of friends whose loyalty dissolved into betrayal the moment police questioned them. A chilling case where a teen killer confessed on social media before police even arrived. And finally, how these confessions shape debates about whether teen murderers can ever be redeemed. But before we dive into those stories, we must ask ourselves, why do these confessions capture our attention? The answer lies in the unsettling idea that behind the words of these teenagers, we glimpse not only their crimes, but also their humanity. One of the most haunting examples of teen killers who confessed comes from a quiet suburban neighborhood in the late 1990s. On the surface, it was the kind of community where families felt safe, where children rode bikes in the street, and where everyone believed terrible crimes happened somewhere else. But behind closed doors, in one of those houses, a 16-year-old boy was harboring thoughts that would soon explode into violence. When the crime was discovered, it shocked not just his family but the entire country. Yet what made this case unforgettable wasn't only the brutal act. It was the way the teenager told the truth, confessing in such chilling detail that detectives would later admit they were shaken to their core. The crime that shattered a family. On a cold evening, neighbors noticed something strange. The family's lights were still on long past midnight, but the home was eerily silent. Hours later, a relative who couldn't reach anyone decided to stop by. What they found inside was a scene that would haunt them forever. Both parents had been brutally killed. Their lives ended in a sudden burst of violence. The question immediately arose: who could commit such an act? Investigators considered the possibility of a burglary gone wrong, but the evidence didn't match. Nothing had been stolen. There was no forced entry. Then attention turned inward, and suspicion quickly fell on the family's teenage son. The one person unaccounted for that night. The search for the son. When police located the 16-year-old, he didn't resist, he didn't run, and he didn't demand a lawyer. Instead, he sat quietly in the interrogation room, his hands folded on the table. What happened next would become the center of this case. The teenager began to talk. At first, his voice was calm, almost detached. But as detectives asked more questions, the truth poured out in waves. He admitted everything: how long he had thought about it, how he carried out the murders, and even how he felt in the aftermath. The shocking part wasn't just the confession itself, but the way he gave it. There was no attempt to soften the story, no excuses. Instead, he described his actions with a mix of matter-of-fact precision and sudden bursts of emotion, as if he himself couldn't understand why he had done it, why he confessed. Psychologists later debated why the boy had confessed so completely. Some argued it was overwhelming guilt, that his young mind simply couldn't carry the weight of killing his parents. Others believed it was the need for recognition, a twisted desire to be heard and acknowledged for what he had done. In his own words, he admitted he had been angry at their strict rules, at the pressure to perform in school, at feeling misunderstood. But beneath that anger was also confusion and regret. In the end, the confession may have been his way of seeking both punishment and release, a way to free himself from the unbearable secret he was carrying. The interrogation tapes, clips of his interrogation, later released in documentaries and news reports, have been analyzed endlessly. Viewers are struck by how childlike he still looked, slouched in a chair, answering questions in a soft, almost timid voice. Yet the words themselves were horrifying, detailing the cold and calculated way he had planned the crime. This contrast, the boyish face paired with the adult-level crime, has become a symbol of the unsettling reality of teen murder cases. It raises difficult questions. At what point does a child become responsible for an adult crime? Can someone so young truly comprehend the weight of taking a life? Courtroom shockwaves. When the case went to trial, the confession was the cornerstone of the prosecution. Jurors listened as his words were read aloud, and many were visibly shaken. Some cried. Others couldn't look at the boy as the details were laid out. The defense argued that the teenager had been emotionally unstable, that his confession revealed a desperate cry for help rather than cold-blooded intent. But the jury couldn't ignore the raw truth of his own words. In the end, the confession sealed his fate. A life sentence in prison. Public reaction. The community struggled to process the case. Neighbors who had watched the boy grow up were stunned. Teachers remembered him as quiet but intelligent. Friends described him as a normal teenager, not the kind of person you would ever expect to commit murder. His confession forced people to confront a terrifying reality. If a seemingly ordinary teen could kill his own parents and then calmly admit it, how well do we really know the people closest to us? The larger debate. Cases like this one fuel ongoing debates about how the justice system should handle teen killers. Should they be punished like adults, as this boy was, or treated as juveniles whose actions are shaped by immaturity and poor impulse control. The confession, while providing closure, also complicated the debate. On one hand, it proved beyond doubt that he was responsible. On the other, it revealed his vulnerability, his confusion, and his youth, all of which made many people question whether prison was the only answer. What this case teaches us. This story illustrates the power and danger of confessions. On one level, the boy's words brought clarity, providing investigators and the court with a detailed account of what happened. On another level, the confession revealed the complexity of teenage psychology. The mix of anger, guilt, immaturity, and remorse that led to both the crime and the telling of it. It forces us to ask, when a teenager confesses, are we hearing the voice of a hardened criminal or a broken child who cannot bear the weight of silence? Closing this chapter, the case of the boy who killed his parents and told all remains one of the most haunting examples of confession-driven justice. His words not only convicted him but also gave the world a chilling glimpse into the mind of a teen killer. And yet, his story is not unique. Across the country, other teens have confessed to crimes just as shocking, each with their own motives, emotions, and consequences. In the next chapter, we'll look at a case where loyalty among friends unraveled in an interrogation room, leading to confessions that shocked everyone involved. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Loyalty among teenagers can feel unbreakable. Friends share secrets, cover for each other, and often believe they are bound together against the world. But when a serious crime is committed, those bonds are tested in ways few could imagine. In this chapter, we explore a case where a group of friends committed a shocking murder, and then, under the weight of police questioning, turned on each other. Their confessions not only revealed the truth, but also destroyed the illusion of loyalty that had held them together. The pact. It began like so many teenage stories, with a group of friends hanging out, trying to escape the boredom of small-town life. These teens were inseparable, always seen together at school, at parties, or wandering the streets late at night. But behind the scenes, their conversations had taken a darker turn. One night, talk of rebellion and anger spiraled into something far more sinister. They made a pact, a decision to take someone's life. The target wasn't random. It was someone they felt had wronged them, a person they believed deserved punishment. For weeks, they whispered and planned, convincing themselves that they were in control, that no one would ever know. But like so many youthful schemes, the reality unraveled quickly. The crime. The night of the attack was quiet. The teens lured their victim to a secluded spot under the guise of hanging out. What followed was brutal, a shocking act of violence carried out by people barely old enough to drive. When the body was discovered the next morning, the town was stunned. The victim was young, well-known, and loved in the community. Rumors swirled immediately, and it wasn't long before suspicion turned toward the tight-knit group of friends. They had been seen together that night. They had no clear alibis. The first crack. When police brought the teens in for questioning, the group's pact of silence began to crack almost immediately. Seated in separate interrogation rooms, away from each other's eyes, the strength of their loyalty dissolved. One boy broke first. Faced with mounting questions and the pressure of seasoned detectives, he began to shake. Then, in a flood of tears, he confessed. He described the plan, the murder, and the role each of his friends had played. The confession was devastating. Not only did it seal his own fate, but it also dragged his closest friends into the spotlight. The domino effect. Once the first confession was out, the rest came quickly. Another teen, realizing the pact was broken, tried to minimize his involvement by shifting blame. "It wasn't me," he insisted at first. "I didn't plan it, I just went along." But when confronted with his friend's words, he too cracked, offering his own version of events. Within hours, the group story collapsed completely. What had been a united front dissolved into finger-pointing and contradictions. Each confession revealed new details, each one darker than the last. Detectives later admitted they hadn't expected the truth to come out so quickly. They thought it would take days, maybe weeks of careful work. Instead, teenage fear and guilt unraveled the case in record time. The community in shock. When the confessions became public, the community struggled to process the betrayal. Parents couldn't believe their children had been capable of such violence. Teachers remembered the teens laughing in class, never suspecting they were capable of murder. But the most painful part for many was the realization that the victim had trusted these teens, trusted them enough to follow them that night. That trust, betrayed in the most horrific way, became the defining element of the crime. Psychology of group confessions. Psychologists often study cases like this to understand why teenagers confess so readily in groups. The answer lies in peer pressure and the breakdown of loyalty under stress. When teens commit crimes together, they often believe their friendships will protect them. But in the cold isolation of an interrogation room, fear takes over. The need to protect oneself outweighs the bond with friends. This is why group crimes often end in cascading confessions. Once one person talks, the rest see silence as hopeless. It becomes a race to tell their version first, hoping to lessen the punishment. Courtroom consequences. In court, the confessions became the backbone of the prosecution's case. Each teen's words painted a fuller picture of the night of the murder. Together, they eliminated doubt about what had happened. Defense attorneys tried to argue that the confessions were coerced, that the teens were pressured into saying things that weren't entirely true. But the consistency across the different statements made it clear. The confessions weren't fabrications, they were the truth. The sentences varied. Some received life in prison, others lesser sentences for cooperating. But none escaped justice completely. The pact that began as a promise of loyalty ended in betrayal and years behind bars. Lessons from the case. This story highlights one of the harshest realities of teen crime. Loyalty is fragile under pressure. Teenagers who believe they can keep dark secrets quickly discover that guilt, fear, and the skilled questioning of investigators can tear apart even the closest friendships. It also raises important questions about responsibility. Should all the teens be punished equally, even if some played smaller roles? Do confessions reveal genuine remorse? Or are they simply survival tactics? These are questions the justice system continues to wrestle with in cases involving young offenders. Closing this chapter, the case of the friends who killed together and confessed together is a stark reminder of how quickly teenage bonds can dissolve when faced with the reality of crime and punishment. Their words not only condemned themselves but also destroyed the trust of an entire community. As we move forward, the pattern continues to emerge. Teenagers, unable to carry the burden of murder, eventually tell all. But not all confessions come inside police stations. Some are far more public. In the next chapter, we'll explore a case where a teenager didn't just confess to police. He confessed to the entire world, using social media to reveal his crime before law enforcement even knocked on his door. When most people picture a confession, they imagine it happening in a dimly lit police interrogation room, recorded by cameras for evidence. But in the digital age, confessions don't always stay behind closed doors. Some spill out onto the internet for the world to see. In this chapter, we explore a chilling case where a teenage killer didn't just admit to his crime. He broadcast it publicly, turning his confession into a viral sensation that shocked millions. The crime before the camera. The story began in a typical suburban neighborhood. A teenager, known to classmates as quiet and withdrawn, had a dark side that few truly understood. Behind closed doors, he struggled with anger, resentment, and a fascination with violence. One night, his bottled-up rage exploded into action. He attacked someone he knew, someone who trusted him, and left behind a crime scene that would haunt his community forever. But unlike many teen killers who panic, hide evidence, or deny their involvement, this teenager did something unthinkable. He decided to tell the world exactly what he had done. The digital confession. Instead of keeping silent, the teen turned to social media. He filmed himself speaking directly into the camera, describing the crime in chilling detail. He admitted who he killed, why he did it, and even showed signs of twisted pride in his actions. Within hours, the video was uploaded. And in the fast-moving world of the internet, it didn't take long for it to spread. At first, viewers thought it might be a sick prank or dark performance art. But as details matched local news reports of a violent death, the terrifying truth set in. The video was real. The confession was no longer just evidence for police. It had become viral content, viewed by thousands before authorities could even take it down. Police scramble for control. When law enforcement learned about the video, they rushed to contain the situation. Not only did they have to secure the crime scene and arrest the suspect, but they also faced the challenge of an online confession spreading like wildfire. The teenager's identity was no longer a secret. Screenshots of the video circulated across platforms. Friends, family, and strangers watched in horror as his words painted a picture of cold-blooded violence. Police located and arrested him quickly, but by then the damage was done. His confession had already been immortalized online. The community reacts. The confession didn't just shock the victim's family, it shocked the world. Neighbors struggled to reconcile the teen they thought they knew with the killer who calmly explained his crime on video. Teachers recalled seeing him in the hallways, never suspecting he harbored such darkness. Friends were horrified to realize that, hours before posting his confession, he had been chatting with them like nothing was wrong. For many, the most disturbing part wasn't just the murder itself. It was the performance of guilt and pride in front of a camera, as if the act of killing wasn't enough. He wanted recognition. He wanted an audience. The psychology of public confession. Experts studying the case pointed to a troubling trend: the blending of crime, performance, and social media. For this teen, confessing online wasn't about remorse, it was about control and attention. By posting the video, he seized control of the narrative before police or journalists could. He framed his crime in his own words, ensuring that millions would see his version first. This reflects a deeper psychological shift among some young offenders. In an age where likes, views, and shares define value, even something as horrific as murder can be turned into content. For them, the crime doesn't feel complete until it's witnessed by others. Legal fallout. In court, the viral confession became the prosecution's most damning piece of evidence. There was no ambiguity, no room for doubt. He had openly admitted everything. Defense lawyers argued that the video was the product of a disturbed mind, that he had been seeking attention rather than making a genuine statement of guilt. But the jury didn't buy it. The viral confession ensured a swift conviction. The teen was sentenced to decades behind bars, his own words sealing his fate. The lasting impact. The case left lasting scars not just on the victim's family, but also on society at large. The video circulated long after the crime, resurfacing in dark corners of the internet despite attempts to erase it. Parents worried about their children stumbling across the footage. Psychologists debated the impact of exposing young minds to such raw violence. And lawmakers began questioning whether social media companies should bear responsibility for stopping these kinds of confessions before they spread. Most chilling of all, copycats began to emerge. Other young offenders who saw the viral attention this teen had received and decided they wanted the same spotlight. Lessons learned. This case highlights one of the darkest consequences of mixing crime with technology. Confessions aren't always about justice. They can be about performance. For investigators, this presents new challenges. A public confession might seem like a blessing, but it also complicates legal proceedings, re-traumatizes victims' families, and spreads the horror far beyond the immediate crime scene. And for society, it forces us to ask a disturbing question. When confessions become viral content, are we witnessing justice, or just another form of exploitation? Closing this chapter, the story of the teen whose confession went viral reminds us that in the digital age, the line between guilt, performance, and notoriety is blurrier than ever. His words weren't just a private admission of responsibility. They were a broadcast, a performance for the world to consume. As shocking as this case was, it's not the end of the story. Some teen killers don't confess to police or to cameras. They confess to the people closest to them. Parents, friends, even strangers, when the guilt becomes too much to bear. In the next chapter, we'll explore the heartbreaking reality of private confessions, where the truth emerges not online or in interrogation rooms, but in whispered words that change lives forever. Nearly 2 decades after Maura Murray disappeared on February 9, 2004, the case still sits at the crossroads of new leads and old mysteries. Her name has become almost synonymous with unsolved disappearances. one of those rare cases that continues to live in both professional investigations and the public imagination. But as more time passes, one painful question remains. Are we moving closer to the truth, or are we simply going in circles? The hope of new evidence. For years, Maura's family, especially her father, Fred Murray, has pushed for renewed efforts to search in the area near Route 112, where her Saturn was found abandoned. Advances in technology, particularly ground-penetrating radar, DNA testing, and forensic genealogy, have raised hopes that new evidence could finally break the case wide open. In 2019, police reportedly excavated a home basement near the crash site after receiving a tip. Although no remains were found, the event reignited interest and showed just how many possibilities still exist in the case. Every new test, every potential search site, carries the weight of both hope and heartbreak for Maura's loved ones. Internet sleuths versus official investigators. One of the most defining elements of Maura Murray's case is how it became a true crime internet phenomenon. Blogs, podcasts, Reddit threads, and YouTube videos continue to analyze every detail, from the items in her car to the timing of her phone calls. Some argue this online attention has helped keep the case alive, bringing in tips and ideas that police may not have considered. Others worry it has caused misinformation, harassment, and endless speculation that distracts from finding real answers. The friction between law enforcement secrecy and public curiosity has been a constant tension. Authorities have kept many details under wraps, claiming they are protecting the integrity of the investigation. But that very secrecy fuels more theories, more doubt, and more obsession from online sleuths determined to solve what the professionals could not. Theories that still haunt the case. Over the years, a handful of theories have dominated discussions about Maura's disappearance. Accidental death in the woods. Some believe Maura may have wandered off after the crash, succumbing to the elements in the freezing February night. Yet, despite countless searches with dogs, drones, and cadaver teams, no trace of her has been found. Foul play by a passerby or local. The idea that Maura accepted help from the wrong person remains one of the most chilling possibilities. The remote location of the crash site has fueled suspicions of an opportunistic predator or even a local resident with dark secrets. A planned disappearance. Others think Maura staged her disappearance, overwhelmed by personal struggles and academic pressures. But if that's true, why has she never resurfaced? No bank activity, no digital trail, no sightings confirmed in nearly 2 decades? Each theory answers some questions but leaves others dangling in uncertainty. The toll on the family. For Maura's family, the case is not just a mystery. It's a wound that never heals. Her father, Fred, has been relentless in keeping her story in the public eye, often criticizing police for withholding information. Her siblings and loved ones continue to mark anniversaries of her disappearance, pleading for answers. What makes the pain sharper is the endless speculation online, where strangers debate Maura's life choices, her state of mind, and even her character. While this attention ensures her case isn't forgotten, it also means her memory is tangled in controversy and rumor, something no grieving family should have to bear. Why Maura's case still resonates. The disappearance of Maura Murray remains one of the most captivating cold cases in American history because it taps into something universal. The fear of vanishing without a trace, of leaving loved ones with only questions. Her story sits at the intersection of mystery and modern obsession, where traditional police work collides with digital age sleuthing. Unlike other cases that fade from the headlines, Maura's continues to spark new discussions, new podcasts, and even television documentaries, each one hoping to uncover the missing piece. Will we ever know the truth? So where does this leave us? The reality is that the disappearance of Maura Murray may never be solved, or it could be solved tomorrow with a single discovery. A piece of clothing, a bone fragment, a confession, or a breakthrough in forensic science. Until then, the case will remain what it has always been. An endless maze of hope and heartbreak, clues and dead ends, theories and counter-theories. For every person who studies her story, whether an FBI agent, a small-town cop, or an online researcher, the goal remains the same: to bring Maura home, to give her family peace, and to finally answer the haunting question: What happened to Maura Murray? Closing thoughts. The story of Maura Murray is not just about one missing woman. It is about how we, as a society, grapple with the unknown. It shows the power of hope, the pitfalls of speculation, and the painful reality that some mysteries may never be solved. But as long as her name is spoken, as long as people continue to search, there is still a chance, however slim, that the truth will come out. And until that day, Maura's disappearance will remain one of the most enduring mysteries of our time.